Welcome to No Longer Conformed. I'm Erik Garthe, and we are studying 7 miracles of Christ, the signs of power in John's Gospel. In this session, we'll be looking at John chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. Jesus is the glory of God. Let's read our passage, John chapter 2, beginning at verse 1. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now there were set 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification of the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons each apiece. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water," and they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw some out now and take it to the master of the feast." And they took it. When the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, they did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew. The master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then the inferior. You have kept the good wine until now." This beginning of signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. The miracles of the New Testament are recorded to illustrate the glory of Jesus Christ. The first of these signs was performed at a wedding. Why? Well, I would say that it is because marriage is the highest expression of human oneness. A man and a woman are made one in fellowship, in joy, and in blessing. At this wedding, there was a threat of failure. Life is fragile. Psalm 39, verse 5. Certainly, every man at his best state is but vapor. Jesus broke into the scene and turned potential failure into glory. Let's consider the Lord's involvement in man's affairs as we look at this miracle. First, let's look at the presence of Christ in human life. John chapter 2 and verse 2. Both Jesus and his disciples were invited. Jesus first appeared in his ministry at a wedding amidst human joy, in the happy experiences of life for needy men and women. The presence of the Lord in his glory is the presence of grace and truth. John chapter 1 verse 14, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." His presence always elevates the situation, full of grace. Grace brings salvation. Titus chapter 2, verse 11. "For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men." And grace brings liberty. Romans chapter 6, verse 14. "For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under law, but under grace." Jesus lifted the scene of that wedding from a threat of embarrassment to an example of joy because of his miracle-working presence. His presence always educates. If grace saves, then truth sanctifies. Jesus brought a sanctifying influence to the wedding and raised the experience of that young couple to the standard of his personal presence. Nothing happened at the feast without his control. John chapter 17 and verse 17 says, "Sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth." If life is to be lived at the highest level, his sanctifying power is to be in operation. If his sanctifying power is to be in operation, you must have Jesus in your life. Second, let's look at the power of Christ in human life. Look at verse 11. This beginning of signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and it continues with, and manifested his glory. The glory of Christ's power was demonstrated in a threefold way. He restored order. They have no wine. Mary expected Jesus to do something about it. They ran out of wine, resulting in panic and chaos. Jesus restored order to the situation. When he comes to a life, he brings order out of chaos. What is a miracle? Well, something we can't do, but Jesus can. Jesus has an ordered plan for your life, for my life. So he restored order. He released nature. Draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. Listen, verse 8. And they filled the water pots with water. They filled them with water, but wine came out of those water pots. What is a miracle but God releasing creation from its laws that he put in place when he created the world? So he restored order, he released nature, and he reversed failure. In verses 9 and 10, when the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Let every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have all well drunk, then the inferior. You have kept the good wine until now." The Lord turned failure into success, crisis into creativity, triumph into a tragedy into triumph, poverty into plenty, and water to wine. When man provides, he gives the best at first and then the inferior. Jesus begins with the best and then gives. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Exceedingly, abundantly, above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. It's Jesus alone who can turn failure into victory. And then third, let's consider the purpose of Christ in human life. Again, verse 11. And his disciples believed in him. Jesus' disciples must have looked at one another and remembered the words of John the Baptist in John chapter 1, verse 34. This is the Son of God. The purpose of Christ in glory among man is the establishment of a divine relationship. John chapter 1, verses 11 and 12. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name. The disciples believed in him, and the gospel had its saving effect. They entered a divine relationship, and by faith in Jesus Christ, we can also enter it. It's more than intellectual assent. It is commitment of mind, of heart, and of will. The purpose of Christ in glory among men is the establishment of divine relation. It's also the experience of a divine fellowship. 1 John chapter 1, verse 3. That which we have seen and heard we declare to you, that you also may have fellowship with us. And truly, Our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. From the moment those disciples believed in the Lord, they were in his circle of fellowship. Children, followers, and friends. John chapter 15, verse 14. You are my friends if you do whatever I command you. Jesus Christ wants you to experience this same fellowship. The question I have is, have you invited Jesus into your marriage, into your home, into your church? More importantly, have you placed your trust in him by faith? You answer those questions, and you have a great day.